Hi there. How's everyone doing today? I just thought I'd pop on. I wanted to, well, I shared with you yesterday some questions about what you like to do to add details, those extra little touches to your cards and projects. And I thought I'd share with you a technique that I used to create one of the 4 leaves on a card that we created at my bingo night. So bear with me. It's always a trick. I don't mind doing lives. I enjoy doing lives. But when I have to flip the camera around and do somersaults and all kind of acrobatics and tricks, it becomes a bit testy. So bear with me as I do this, because I've got to now adjust the camera so that you can see the project that I'm going to be talking about. So let's see if we can get this all together. It's probably not going to sync all at once, but we'll see if we can happen. Okay, there we go. So we have a picture of leaves. And actually, what I didn't look to do, see if I was actually live in the right spot. Looks like I am, which is always a positive, which is always good. So this is one of the cards that we made at my recent bingo night event, and everyone got to create this card, and I absolutely love it. For me, the sentiment in itself was what kind of inspired a really clean and simple, fresh looking card. But when you look closer, you have all those extra details. So the sentiment is, autumn teaches us that change can be beautiful. So I really loved it. So these are the cards. So yeah, this is the card I made, created, designed, if you like, and everyone got to make them. Now I wanted to show you how I went about creating the leaf. And the same technique applies to all 3. So I'm going to bring in here one of these leaves that we have. And I did an extra one the other day too, just so we can use that as a reference point too. So for this particular leaf, I used 3 different ink colors. I used Daffodil Delight, Lemon Lime Twist, and Garden Green. I started with the lightest color. I always do that when I'm blending. I just think it works a lot better to do that way. So I have my Daffodil Delight. I'm going to use Daubers. A lot of time I use my blending brushes, but if you use a dauber, it seems to give you a much more concentrated color. And obviously you want to make sure that you have well inked ink pads when you're doing this technique too, otherwise you'll find that you won't actually pick up very much color. So the same as we do with a blending brush, I still like to start off my project so it's not coming on too concentrated. But if you get those little striations, I wouldn't worry about it. You know, sometimes you get those kind of like marks when you bring on a fresh ink and a fresh inking up. When you're working with something like this with a leaf, I think it just adds, I'm just making sure I realize I'm probably not even in the camera here. I think it just adds to it because you're trying to add as much texture. Well, my aim is to add as much texture as I can when I create these kinds of things. So I'm adding just my Daffodil Delight, going around those points there. I'm not filling it all in because I'm going to come in with different colors, and I don't need to layer them so much because I don't want to lose some of that coloring. If you pop on, please say hello. I'd love to know if anyone's watching. And if you have any comments or questions, please also don't hesitate to ask. And if I miss any questions, then please know that I will come back and answer them afterwards. So here we go. Let's bring in the next color. I've got Lemon Lime Twist. So I'm going to bring this one in next. I've got a separate dauber, and I like to label all my daubers. I don't use them for different colors and wash them out. For me, I think you'll find they're kind of a little of an inexpensive product to have. So you're not going to be spending too much money. So you need to have, one that uses for multiple colors. That's how I find it anyway. I just use one for each color that I have. So I'm now coming in with my Lemon Lime Twist and just bringing in that color. This is going to be blending up into the Daffodil Delight, and I'm going to give good coverage over all of my white area of cardstock here. And as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be perfect. If you've got some areas that are more concentrated than others, that works fine. That's going to be just great because this is an autumn leaf. It's not going to be uniform. It's part of nature. And so there you go. And you can just work this in as much as you want to. so that you feel that you've got a blended finish to it. So there we go. We're just going to come in with those colors. Now I don't want to lose the yellow, so I'm not going to go too far up onto the yellow there. So there you go. So it's a pretty quick coverage there. And as I said, with the Daubers, you definitely get a more concentrated coloring on it. Okay, next I'm going to bring Garden Green. Now, Garden Green is obviously a much, much stronger color. And for the Garden Green, I'm just going to add just a little bit, and you can see very clearly here. On here, when you've got the vein covering it, it also helps cover up any imperfections that you're not very happy with, which is always a good thing too. So I'm just going to add a little bit of the Garden Green down the bottom here. Just going to run around there and add that darker hue there. So now you can take a look, step back if you like, and decide, do you need to do any more blending? Do you want to bring any more of the yellow down? Does it need to come in a little bit more? But I think that's pretty good. Now you could, in theory, just leave it at this. And you've got a great autumn leaf there. You've got different colors coming into it. It's not going to look like a plain old leaf. For me, I don't want to have my leaves just that one color, so I don't typically cut them out of you know, a cardstock or something like that, because it's just that one solid color. I want to blend in and bring in the different colors. Now the next step I took was to add some water splattering. And you see how you've got these white specks here? That's just by flicking water onto these. Okay, so let's have a look at how that happens. Now I've got a very old aqua painter here. Good tip for these next two steps we're taking. You want to make sure that you clear your work area. You don't want to have anything sitting by the side that could potentially get impacted by what you're doing. So as I said, I've got an old aqua painter. You could use a paintbrush, anything with some water. You're going to be able to do this. Now I'm just getting a little bit of water onto my fingers here. And I'm going to literally just splat that water that's on my fingers down onto, and I don't know if you can see here, where that splattering has taken place, it's now got those white, it's the ink is kind of being pushed away from those areas. So this you can do this in two different ways. You can do it as I just explained to you, and you're going to get large dots or irregular patterns. Now equally, you could, whoops, I nearly squeezed out all the water. You could tap this, and when you tap it, it's going to give you a much finer spray. But you also want to make sure that that brush has got some wetness to it so that it's got something to flick. Or you could equally tap it with your finger there, and it's going to give you that effect. I personally really love how this comes together. It's just such a surprise when you flick on that water and it suddenly you can see all that speckling effect going on. But very simple, very doable. Don't need any fancy gadgets or techniques for this one. Now the next part that I did was, you can probably see here, I'm going to bring in a marker and I'm going to flick the marker and give it that other little speckled effect. But one tip here is let the water that you've already splattered dry before you go on to that next step. The reason being, if you don't, and you'll see this here, if you look carefully on this part of the leaf here, that big white area was not dry when I did this, and so those speckles have bled, whereas they're not that pristine, crisp speckle that the others are. Now that might not bother you. You might be good with that, and that might be exactly what you're looking for. So you can either set this aside and let it dry, or you could bring in a heat tool and let it dry. It does feel a little on the damp side right now, so I don't think I'm going to speckle onto here, but I'll show you demonstration wise on this one because it is obviously dry now. So again, make sure anything in your periphery area that could potentially get splattered is out of the way here. So I'm using my Stamping Right marker, and I've just gone ahead with the garden green here on this one. I'm using the brush end. Now, a lot of people are very tentative about doing this technique because you're going to be pushing the nib of the pen against the lid, and they're like, oh, because you obviously want to be careful because you don't want to break that nib. You want to be gentle with it, but you are doing that brush, you're brushing it, running the nib along the edge of the lid. And it's a bit hard for you to see, I'm sure, because I already have speckles on here, but you can see under the underground. But if I flip this over, just an example that you can see, it's going to give a very light spray. So here you go. You can see a really light spray. And when you add that into the equation, see, it's a little damp, but let's give it a try anyway. Just adds another layer of detail and interest, which, as I said, it's not going to take you very long to do, but I think it's well worth it because it's just going to bring up, can you see that there? There you go. Just gives you so much more interest into your fall leaves, because fall leaves are absolutely beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. So much detail and richness in their colors. So that was the tip that I wanted to share with you today. Just a little technique that I enjoy doing. And we did that on the card that I created here. And as I said, it's all about, for me, it's all about the fun of adding details and textures and layers. And they can be simple, but they have a big wow and a big impact on how they come together and bring a project together. So I hope you give this a try. Thanks so much for joining me today. Reach out with any questions. Put them in the comments. Send me a message. You're always welcome to email me at sarah@projectstamp.com. And I look forward to sharing some more techniques and different aspects of paper crafting with you very soon. Thanks so much.